Come on, get up.
Morning, Brian.
Stephen, are you aware that you've voluntarily embarked upon a PhD in physics?
Hello.
Hello.
Science.
Arts.
I'm a cosmologist.
What's that?
I study the marriage of space and time.
The perfect couple.
One never knows from where the next great leap forward is going to come, or from whom.
Hello everyone, this is Movie Hot. Now you will hear a brief retelling of the film The Theory of Everything. Enjoy watching. Cambridge, England, 1967. Student cosmologist Stephen Hawking races his bicycle against his roommate, Brian. They stop at a student club to drink beer, and there Stephen takes a liking to a student named Jane Wilde. The embarrassed young man approaches to introduce himself. The girl is his complete opposite, studying art. They talk until night, and as she leaves, Jane writes her phone number for her interlocutor. Professor Sayama gives the students a sheet of 10 most important problems they need to solve in a few days. At the pub, Stephen sees Jane again, but she is already relaxing in the company of another guy and shows no desire to spend time with Stephen. Brian is fussing about the problems, asking how many his friend has solved, but Stephen hasn't even looked at the sheet yet and put it off for later. Turning on music and knocking over a cup of coffee, Hawking finally gets down to the assignment. He scribbles solutions over a train schedule. It turns out he is capable of solving 9 out of 10 problems. The teacher is impressed. He invites the brilliant student to discuss the topic of his dissertation, which he still hasn't decided on. But no less than his doctorate, our hero is preoccupied with his new acquaintance. He waits for the girl outside a church and immediately invites her to a family dinner. Jane is a deeply religious person, which cannot be said about Stephen. He cannot allow a divine creator to interfere in his precise calculations. Right then, Stephen invites Jane to a ball, and she agrees without hesitation. But having fun with him doesn't work out. Stephen doesn't dance. However, he knows a lot of interesting things about stars, ultraviolet light, and men's shirt fronts. It seems that two completely dissimilar people find it very interesting and fun to spend time together. Left alone, the young man took Jane's hand, kissed her, and finally invited her to dance. Stephen hurries to a departing train, but for some reason experiences difficulty walking. The best students are brought to a meeting with the famous mathematician Roger Penrose, who gives a lecture about black holes. What we have in the end is a space-time singularity. Space and time break down. On the way back, the student is pensive. He wants to apply Penrose's theory to the entire universe, rewind time backwards, and understand how this very universe appeared. Sayama suggests Stephen mathematically justify how black holes could have participated in the creation of the universe. Hawking stands at the blackboard for hours with chalk that periodically falls from his hand. The young man's gait has become unsteady. His legs give way and he falls, hitting his head hard. Hawking lies motionless on a hospital table as a doctor takes his cerebrospinal fluid. Stephen cannot properly move his right hand and leg. No exercises help him. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. That is the diagnosis given by the doctor. It is a progressive disease affecting the brain cells responsible for muscle activity, such as swallowing, walking, breathing, and speaking. Stephen faces gradual muscle destruction and decay. He has a maximum of 2 years left. His brain will remain unaffected, but no one will know what Stephen is thinking. The doomed student now sits on a mattress in the corner of the room. Brian wanted to cheer him up, but upon learning his friend has only 2 years to live, he is at a loss and simply leaves the room. And then Jane calls, but Hawking doesn't pick up, so the girl comes to see him in person. Stephen hides and doesn't open the door. Brian told her about her friend's tragedy. Jane still manages to meet her boyfriend when he is watching TV in the dormitory hall. Hawking asks her to leave, but the girl threatens that if he doesn't come play croquet with her right now, he will never see her again. Stephen immediately gets up and hobbles toward the field. Jane is trembling, and tears well up in her eyes at the sight of Stephen, who finds it very hard to control his body. She didn't think it was this bad. He runs back to his room and again asks Jane to leave him alone. He only has 2 years left. He needs to work. But the girl confesses that she loves Stephen and will be with him until the end. The student tells the professor that the topic of his dissertation will be time. Stephen's father, Frank, invites Jane for a talk. There will be no duel. Jane will suffer a very heavy defeat. The girl replies that she is a strong person and loves his son, so she will fight the illness together with Stephen. Soon the couple gets married and they have a son. The illness progresses. Hawking goes down the stairs on all fours and moves with the help of 2 canes. barely dragging his feet on the ground. His speech has also deteriorated. The professors criticize Stephen's dissertation, at least its first 3 chapters. But the 4th, about a black hole at the beginning of time, is brilliant. Hawking receives his doctorate, but Stephen doesn't stop there. He wants to prove his theory and derive one simple equation explaining everything for it. Friends throw Stephen a party, but while the students chat and joke, Stephen himself fights with peas on his plate. Everyone else finds it so easy to manage their hands and utensils. Upset, Stephen goes out and tries to climb the stairs, but for him this is now an impossible task. His son Robert looks down at him. One day, Jane silently rolls a wheelchair into the kitchen. Stephen just as silently collapses into it. Despite his condition, the scientist tries not to lose heart. Soon the spouses have a second child, a daughter, Lucy. Jane is torn between caring for her husband and the children. While stuck in his sweater, he gets an idea. Jane brings her husband to the university. It's hard to make out what Stephen is saying, but the professors catch every word of the young genius. According to his theory, particles are gradually released from black holes, and eventually it shrinks and turns into something. This helps prove that time and the universe had a beginning. Several academics are outraged and call his words nonsense, but others recognize the genius of his theory. Hawking's work begins to be published in the best scientific journals. Jane and the children prepare a gift for Stephen, a chair with electric drive, which he can now operate himself. Alas, Jane has absolutely no time or energy for her own dissertation. The family goes to the Hawking's country house. Getting Stephen in his wheelchair to the house is quite a task. During lunch, Stephen chokes. This has been happening to him often lately. Jane is completely exhausted. She can't cope with the children and her seriously ill husband. Her mother suggests she sign up for the church choir. Jane sings beautifully. At church, she meets a young widower, Jonathan. The man takes it upon himself to teach Robert to play the piano. He stays for dinner and tries to feed Stephen peas. Jonathan tries to keep the conversation going and asks the host about his project. Stephen already speaks so poorly that Jane has to act as his interpreter. The scientist's new idea contradicts the old one and consists of the universe having no boundaries, just as it has no beginning. He intends to derive a theory that will explain the interaction of everything in the world. Jane has also become excellent at physics and, using a potato and peas, explains to the guest on what pillars this very physics rests. Jonathan has no children or obligations, so he offers the Hawkings his help. Stephen says nothing to his wife about this and simply goes to his room. But later in bed, he says he won't object if she turns to a man for help. Jonathan starts spending a lot of time with the family. The task of carrying Stephen in his wheelchair falls on his shoulders. He literally becomes a new member of the family. This significantly eased Jane's life, but the exact nature of her relationship with the new friend is not entirely clear. One day she tells Jonathan she is pregnant. He, like many others, was mistaken in thinking Stephen was no longer capable of conception. After the birth of their third child, Timothy, during a family celebration, Stephen's father approaches and advises hiring a nurse, but they can't afford one. Besides, they already have a helper. But Frank hints that his son is a world-famous celebrity, and such relationships in their family are inappropriate. The angry mother bluntly asks Jane who fathered Timothy. Jonathan hears this and immediately prepares to leave the house. He is also tired of all the gossip. After all, he is just helping. But the further problem is that he has truly fallen in love with Jane. The woman also has feelings for him. This further convinces Jonathan to leave the family. Now Jane has to cope alone again. Hawking goes to Jonathan at the church with 2 bottles of beer. Remember when you were in charge? He doesn't know what is between him and his wife, but asks his friend to help again. He will fly to France, where he has been invited to the opera. Jane will rest with the children in nature for now, and Jonathan agrees to accompany them. Perhaps this is what Jane's family could have been like, a husband who would be her support and helper. But she made her choice. The family friend stays to sleep in a small tent. During the performance, Stephen feels unwell. He starts coughing up blood and is taken away on a stretcher. Stephen has pneumonia. Now he lies connected to a breathing apparatus. The doctor suggests Jane turn off the machine at any time she wishes, but this offer angers her. The second option is a tracheotomy, i.e., making an incision in the trachea. But in that case, Stephen will never be able to speak again. Stephen will live and provide everything the Hawkings need. They will have to return to Cambridge, and Jane says goodbye to Jonathan. The operation that will forever deprive the scientist of his speech begins. Jane comes to Stephen in the hospital and brings a board with letters. They are all divided into 6 groups by color. First, Stephen must blink when he hears the right color, then blink when Jane names the specific letter. The spouses are in despair. Stephen doesn't blink and still moves his lips, trying to say something, while Jane lists the colors over and over again. To care for her husband, Jane hires a nurse, Elaine, with the best recommendations. The first thing Stephen asks for using the board is a cup of tea. The moderately strict nurse quickly finds an approach to him. In the evening, Elaine praises Stephen. He is a wonderful patient, a genius, and also cheerful. After some time, Hawking is presented with a computer with a speech synthesizer. With its help, Stephen will be able to communicate somehow, and also write using a clicker and his working finger, about 4 words per minute. Getting somewhat accustomed, Stephen decides to write a book about time this way. He wins a bet with Professor Siama for an adult magazine, Penthouse. Elaine treats the new literature seriously and with pleasure lets the professor look at the pages with naked women. Hawking comes up with a title for his book, A Brief History of Time. He hardly communicates with his wife, but next to Elaine, he simply shines. One day, Stephen greatly upsets his devoted Jane. He types text, and the machine reproduces it. I have asked Elaine to accompany me to America. Stephen wanted the nurse to accompany him on the trip for an award. They gave him only 2 years, the spouse recalls, yet he is still alive, and that is a very long time. Stephen's face is further distorted by a grimace of crying. Tears stream down his face. Thus ended the Hawking family life. Jane goes to Jonathan at the church. They can finally be together. A Brief History of Time was published in 1988 and became a bestseller. On stage, Stephen Hawking is introduced by his longtime colleague, Professor Siama. Brian is also in the hall. Stephen himself drives onto the stage and jokingly answers students' questions. Suddenly, a pen falls. Stephen becomes thoughtful, raises his head, stands up, straightens his posture, confidently walks over to the pen, picks it up, and hands it to the student. But this beautiful fantasy quickly ends. Hawking concludes his speech with the words, "There is always something you can succeed at. While there's life, there is hope." A year later, Stephen sends Julia a letter. The spouses are invited by Queen Elizabeth II of England to award the professor the Order of the Companions of Honor. "We have had an unusual life," says Julia. Stephen looks at his 3 children and writes to his wife, "Look what we have created." Jane finally managed to defend her doctorate in medieval poetry and lives happily with Jonathan. She supported her former husband all his life. Stephen Hawking died on March 14, 2018, 4 years after the film's release.